Well, that's an interesting question. And to do justice to that, let's go back to the basics. Economics is the study of resource allocation. How do individuals, firms, and societies use their resources? It is about production, consumption, distribution, markets, profits, growth, and the price system. It involves the study of individual choices, household preferences, decisions of the firms, individual markets, and the overall economy. So when you think about things like business cycle, economic growth, and recession, and other macro indicators like GDP, inflation, interest rates, unemployment, and so on. So basically, when we talk in economic terms, it's often about scarcity. Resources are scarce. So efficiency matters in the allocation and use of limited resources. It is basically a way of thinking. Economics provides a decision-making framework for individuals, firms, policymakers, and society at large. Ultimately, economic science is all about providing insight into how existing deadweight losses can be fixed. And that's not necessarily an end in itself, but largely a way to increase social welfare. So when you succeed in getting the economy to a state of Pareto efficiency, like we say, then you maximize welfare, knowing that it is not possible, again, to achieve a resource allocation scenario where one individual is better off without making at least one individual worse off. Of course, it is another question entirely whether that construct is possible at all in reality. And I guess we will get to that in the course of this discussion. But my point here is economic analysis has broader implications. I mean, for instance, you study deadweight losses in order to, say, improve efficiencies and unlock more resources. In everyday language, that could mean increasing the GDP of a country like India, say by 0.5%. Now, think about what that means for the 1.4 billion people in India. It could mean reducing the corruption in the petroleum sector, say in a country like Venezuela or Nigeria, which also exacerbates the unrest and security challenges in some sections of those two countries. Again, think about what that means for a country like Nigeria, where you have 83 million people who live below the poverty line. When you also talk about fixing inefficiencies and deadweight losses, it could also mean maximizing female workforce participation in industrial countries, say like the United States, where, as we know, women still earn far less than men in nearly all occupations. And the wage gap is notably wider and more profound, even for older female workers. If I recall correctly, a 2015 report by the Council of Economic Advisors concludes that had women's labor force participation remained at the levels they were at in 1970, the United States economy would have been $2 trillion smaller, which in percentage terms, that's about 14%. Now imagine that for a second, 14% reduction in the size of the economy had women participation not moved up, So when you think about these things in economics, you probably see them on your graph. You see numbers on the x-axis, on the y-axis, but those numbers do have broader implications. In economics, you talk about welfare maximization. That means a wide variety of things. In the real world, could mean poverty reduction, economic mobility, a higher quality of life, safe drinking water, safer neighborhoods, gender parity, global vaccines equity in the current environment, cleaner air. All in all, you're talking about a more just society. The list goes on. So when you talk about economic science, it does provide a systematic framework that can allow us to abstract from real-world complexities. It gives us the tools and methodologies for understanding and making sense of a highly dynamic and complex environment. And of course, you don't expect it to be perfect. Absolutely not. I mean, is anything perfect in this world? Maybe not. So I'll leave it at that. And I guess we'll go into the nuances. But when you think about economics, it's a framework for making everyday decisions, which oftentimes will require us to abstract from reality, and use some simplified model to help us then graduate into more complex scenarios.